Good morning, and thank you for joining us. This is Heroes and Patriots, a program about national security, intelligence, and foreign policy. Today is Thursday, November 6th, 2025. We are coming to you live from the studios of KMUD in Northern California. I'm Mary Massey, and with me is co-host John SAKOWICZ. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mary. Good morning to our audience listening live to the broadcast here in Northern California, and to our national audience listening to the web stream live. Our next guest, very, very excited about. He was actually the answer to a Jeopardy question. I don't know if he knows that.
No, I don't.
Who is one of our most decorated American journalists who has either won or shared two Pulitzer Prizes for reporting and journalism, and 2 Emmy Awards on PBS. Very excited, longtime friend of the show, one of the great Americans, and what I call a citizen patriot. I think our next guest is what the framers of our Constitution, the founders of our country, had in mind when they coined the term citizen patriot. Mary?
Yeah, throughout the program, we invite you as listeners to speak to our guests on topic. That number to call, 707-923-3911, and our morning CC will be routing your calls and add you into the conversation. So as John mentioned, there's been a lot of chaos, and our guest has been in the middle of a lot of it.
Well, look what happened in the last couple of days. We have the first socialist democratic mayor of a major American city, New York City. We have Dick Cheney dying, neoconservative founder of the Project for a New American Century, just a nightmare, a monstrosity of a whatever it was, think tank, political action committee, everything else. And then we have Nancy Pelosi announcing her retirement this morning.
A lot of changes afoot. So let's get started. As our first guest is here with us in the studio, his name is Hedrick Smith. Mr. Smith is a Pulitzer Prize-winning former New York Times reporter, editor, and bureau chief in both Moscow and Washington. Mr. Smith moved into television in 1989, as John mentioned, and became an Emmy award-winning producer and correspondent of long-form documentaries for PBS over the next 25 years. And we'd like to bring Mr. Smith back in. Hey, it's so good to see you again.
I want to tell you something. My mother she can't believe what you guys have been saying.
hey, but you're
I mean, this is all phony, but it's nice. Thank you very much.
No, it's not phony. I mean, you're the eminent journalist and fact checker.
Yeah.
It's every word is true, and you know it.
So we welcome you back to the program. It's so good to see you again. And before we get into the specifics of what we're going to talk about today, could you just reflect on some of the most recent changes, such as Mr. Cheney dying, Nancy Pelosi not rerunning, and then our new mayor-elect in New York?
Well, the obvious thing is maybe the page of history is turning and we're moving into a new generation. I mean, Cheney's dying long after he left office is not historic, but Nancy Pelosi deciding finally to step down. That's a personal decision. She could have stayed on. She decided to stay on after turning over the House speakership and the leadership of the Democratic caucus in the House. So this is a signal. And Manbani is obviously at the other end, 34 years old, youngest mayor in I don't know how many decades, and riding a tide of youth engagement. I mean, one of the most striking things about that campaign is how young people were excited. The last time I saw young people really excited in politics in this country was in 2016 when Bernie Sanders, that youthful 70-year-old Democratic socialist from the powerhouse state of Vermont, was traipsing across the country and damn near overturned Hillary Clinton, the epitome of the Democratic establishment. So, I mean, you are seeing some kind of important change. Whether or not we're going to see it come along in Congress, I mean, are we going to see a change in leadership in the Senate? For example, on the Democratic side, we've now seen it in the Republican side because Mitch McConnell's retiring and John Thune is taking over. But I do think we are starting to move forward, and that's a good thing.
Rick, you've made a lot of your life's recent work dedicated to fighting gerrymandering throughout the country. The times we've had you on the show in the past, you've spoken about it. What do you think about the spate of gerrymandering that's going on right now?
Painfully making progress. States like Michigan and Colorado were adopting citizen commissions to do draw the lines and the maps for congressional districts and state legislative districts, which was an effort to take the politics out of the map drawing, because with the map drawing, and particularly with modern computer software, it can be done in a very, very sophisticated way. We've had gerrymandering, of course, ever since practically the beginning of the Republic. That's why Eldridge Gerry, not Jerry, but Eldridge Gerry, 1812, Massachusetts governor, he was the first gerrymander guy. But it changed dramatically in this century, and particularly in 2010 and 2011. We saw really sophisticated software going there. I think it's terrible. On the other hand, I think we also have a terrible problem. I think the fate of our democracy is at stake in the 2026 election. I think the damage done to the institutions, to the separation of powers, to the rule of law, to keeping the Justice Department, criminal prosecutions nonpartisan, to one institution after another in our system is in great jeopardy. We're in great danger. And I think that we need to have some check on Trump's march toward autocracy. And therefore, I'm not pro-Democrat. I happen to be an independent. But it's not, I think we need a constitutional coalition. And the only way we can get there is to have some official opposition, which means a Democratic majority in the House, to at least have a real tug of war over the struggle over power in this country.
Rick, I think the title of your next book is something along the lines of From Promise to Peril, if I'm not mistaken. And in the context of the Trump administration, I think it's the perfect title. Talk a little bit about your recent work and just how our country might turn the page on the Trump nightmare. You talked about early in the show here 5 minutes ago about turning the page for America. How do we turn the page on Trump? And talk about that, your book.
Well, let me do that as a second question. Going back from promise to peril, when I came to Washington in 1960 as a young reporter and joined the New York Times Bureau in 1962, and I've been out in the South covering Martin Luther King and John Lewis and the Civil Rights Movement, there was an enormous optimism, a sense of promise of American democracy. We were widening participation in the political system with expanding voting rights. And then we had Medicare and Medicaid, and then we had the race to the moon. It was a sense of optimism, buoyancy. And even though we had the nightmare of nuclear Armageddon hanging over our heads, there was a sense of confidence in the country that we could manage things. If you look at the country today, we're in absolutely the opposite shape, even before Trump comes into power and Trump 2.0. People are depressed. They think the country's on the wrong track. They don't trust the people in the other party, whichever party you're talking about. Congress it can't function.
Right.
It's torn apart by polarization, and it has been for 20 or 25 years. Government shutdowns have become routine. This is the longest we've had. But when I started out in Washington, and first 10, 15 years of my career at the New York Times, we never saw a government shutdown. We saw the budgets passed every year. We saw bipartisan coalitions come in. People don't realize it, but on Medicare, 77 Republicans voted with 213 Democrats to pass the bill. 77 and 230 across the lines. And even the opposition was bipartisan. There were Democrats opposed to it along with Republicans. We haven't seen that kind of politics now for the last 20 years. So that's why I say we're in peril. And then Trump has taken advantage of that. When you have a country that's divided economically with enormous economic inequality, with the people in the working middle class and people who own 7-Eleven shops and small shops, hard pressed to make ends meet. And you have soaring income. I mean, they're talking about paying Elon Musk $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
I mean, $1 trillion. I mean, it's so enormous. It's laughable. I mean, it's unreal. And you've got people working 2 and 3 jobs, and couples working 4 jobs, and they can't make ends meet. And then they're going to raise the healthcare costs are going up, and they're going to cut food stamps. I mean, this is wacko.
So you alluded.
I mean, so what I'm talking about is it isn't just Trump. We've gone way off track. Things change. The way the government works today isn't
Right.
the way you and I learned about it in high school. We learned about separation of powers, and you pass a bill in one house, and you pass a bill in the other house. Then you have a conference committee, and they get together and they compromise. That's not how it works now. Well, they can't do that. They haven't been able to do that for a long time. The power has gravitated to the presidency. I just read a piece the other day that I realized the general phenomenon, but not this fact. The War Powers Resolution was passed in 1973 by Congress to limit presidents from starting conflicts on their own because the Constitution gives the war power to Congress, okay? Every president since that was passed has violated the War Powers Act. Trump is the most egregious, but the Republicans in Congress let him get away with it. We got off track for quite a while. I call it the fracturing of America, fracturing economically, fracturing politically, and then as a country. When I grew up and when I started out as a reporter with the New York Times, the enmity and the hostility that we had with the Soviet Union in the Cold War was part of the glue that kept us together. And in a way, when Gorbachev took it away from us, we no longer had an enemy, although Putin has now replaced it. We sort of relaxed, and now we can't even get together on foreign policy. So right. I think this, we've got really deep problems here to deal with, and we're not going to get back to a really good situation until we deal with the economics as well as the politics. I mean, the economics are crucial.
So you mentioned the 1973 Act, and where power is distributed differently or was supposed to be differently. Is that when you're citing the turning point, if you will? Is that when it happened, or was it before that?
Well, it happens. It happens at different times in different places. It didn't happen immediately in '73. It happened. Right. It happened later on. If you look at the economic fracturing of the country, it really starts in the '80s, but it becomes very dramatic in the '90s. We lose 3-4 million jobs to China. We lost. I forget what the number is. It's staggering. I think in the 1990s. From 1995 to about 2005, we lost 50,000 factories in this country, all across the country. So it didn't happen like this. It was a trend, and we in the media didn't do a very good job. We reported each factory closing. We reported each dot, but we didn't connect the dots, and we didn't tell people what was going on, frankly, until Occupy Wall Street. It was about 2013 that we woke up to what had been going on for 20 years. So it's very hard, Mary, I think, to put your finger on, but certainly through the 1970s, from 45 to 1980, is a pretty constant period where the middle class is sharing in the growth and wealth and prosperity of the country, where you've got a lot of bipartisan politics, regardless of who is in the White House and who has the majority on Capitol Hill. You have a sense of confidence in the country. If you look at the polls in terms of people believing that the government is going to do the right thing most of the time, the numbers are up in the 60s and 70s all through the early mid 80s. But somewhere in the late 80s and the 90s, we begin to see several trends start to cut negatively, and it's been building.
Rick, you mentioned that every president since the War Powers Act has been a warmonger. I never thought Barack Obama would have such a lust for war in Afghanistan, but there you go.
Well, I wouldn't say they're all warmongers, but the War Powers Act did not give the president the right to take a drone strike and knock out an American citizen, even if he was a terrorist abroad. Okay, the War Powers Act was designed to stop that and say to the president, "Go to Congress and ask them."
Right. So here's my question. Not here at KMUD, but on another station, I interviewed Bob Gates, former Secretary of Defense and CIA director. And he made an utterance that I found absolutely shocking. War is a business and business is good. War is a business and business is good. That should be etched on his tombstone or his mausoleum someday.
I have to say I'm shocked, too, because I have some respect for Gates, although Gates, as a senior CIA guy, totally misread Gorbachev and gave very bad advice on Gorbachev. Said, don't believe him, don't trust him, this is phony. But I think he was a good Secretary of Defense. I'm amazed he would say that. War is not business. There's no question about it. It's life and death.
Here's where other commentators have gone with that comment, that war has been the engine of the U.S. economy since World War II. War is an export. We export war. We have so many military bases throughout the world. We're always fighting a war somewhere. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a Republican or a Democratic president. We're always fighting a war. Do you agree with that premise that war?
There's a lot of truth to that. There's no question that we export armaments. I mean, the arms business is an enormous business which we've benefited from. There's no question that World War II and even the Cold War generated some of the great technologies that we've profited from in the civilian, in the peaceful sector. I mean, if the medium we're talking on now, the cell phone, this all came out of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. This is the Defense Department trying to generate the new technology for war, and then it gets converted into the peaceful economy. So there's no question that the military spending, military technology are important. But I don't think that, I don't disagree that people have used war and used our military strength to push our influence in the world. And we do have, we call ourselves non-colonizers. We're not like the British or the French or the Dutch or the Portuguese who all had their empires. No, we just put bases down all over the world and other people's countries and get them to let us do it. There's no question that has an influence on our domestic politics. And that, it's interesting. Here we have Trump now verging on attacking Venezuela. And some of the people who are most critical of him are people in the MAGA movement who want to be isolationists, get out of the world, get our bases back. So, this doesn't necessarily always go on party lines. There's no question that that's dangerous. But for a former Secretary of Defense to say war is business, war makes business, war profits business, I can understand that. But war is not business. War is flesh and blood. I want to tell you, the first time in Vietnam as a reporter, when I went on a helicopter mission and I saw a bunch of dead bodies, I damn near threw up. It turned my stomach. War turns your stomach if you face it face to face.
It's 17 minutes past the hour if you're just tuning into the program. This is Heroes and Patriots, and we are speaking with Hedrick Smith. And we are talking about how things have shifted and changed over the years. I wonder, since you were so prominently featured in Moscow or positioned in Moscow, with Putin now in charge and, his so-called reactivating nuclear tests, could you respond to that part of the piece?
And also Trump responding in kind.
Yeah.
That we're going to resume nuclear tests as well. That's a big theme on our show, Rick.
And we'll take a call after this answer.
The prospect of nuclear war.
Well, people who didn't live through the 60s and 70s can be cavalier in their attitudes toward nuclear war. But we lived in a period where the kids in the school were all learning how to duck under their chairs and their desks in case there was a nuclear attack. How that was going to protect them, I don't know. But the point was, it was pervasive. It was a big fear. And simply to get nuclear tests stopped, to get the test ban treaty, was an enormous achievement. I mean, it took years after that until we got limitations on arms, and we're now scrapping all of those. This is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, nuclear weapons literally could end the world in a flash.
Right.
What was his name? Neville Shute wrote a book about nuclear Armageddon, and his book was about a bunch of people living in Australia. And it was the last place on the earth where people were alive, and they were going to die from nuclear sickness. The difficulty is that this generation of politicians as well as citizens are so far removed in memory and experience from actually living with the fear of nuclear war, of a preemptive strike, or of the U.S. going to what they call DEFCON 5, which is the maximum level of security, being a trigger alert. I'm uneasy with any individual, any president having the power to push the button and start the nuclear war. But with a president as mercurial and as moody and as on again, off again, zigzag, look at him on foreign policy, look at him on all kinds of stuff, tariffs, whatever. Trump is all over the place. Having somebody with that kind of changeable mood and I'm not talking about whether or not he's mentally ill or not, just on again, off again.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw 100% tariffs. I'm going to throw 145%. Or next day, I'm going to cut it off.
Right.
Somebody like that making those decisions about nuclear testing, nuclear war, makes me very, very uneasy.
Rick, we have a caller for you. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Rick Smith, for your really brilliant insights for so many years. I have a question, though, to bring this back to the United States. And I could hear you talk about foreign policy forever, and the focus on changeable mood and the peril that we're facing, especially with these elections. I'm just wondering where you think we might be going over the next year, and especially with the present administration's embrace of authoritarianism and authoritarian leaders. What do you think is going to happen with the state of elections, the free and fair elections, the attempt to controlling the voter rolls over the next year that might make 2026 and then later on 2028 very problematic from an election point of view? And I have a second part to that question.
Well, I'm going to first of all,
can I just ask a second part? We all feel hopeful in one sense because of the results, but do you think that's sustainable? And the Democratic Party is going to be able to sustain that around the country?
I want to tell you, I think one of the things that journalists do too much in America today is predict. I'm in the business of reporting. I'm telling you what I can see and what I see on the ground. What I see on the ground is that the courts have been the principal institution of resistance to the president. We have a couple of hundred decisions by district judges saying the president doesn't have the authority to do this, that, or the other thing, to shut an agency down, to fire people, to kill a program, or to impose tariffs, or to deport people, or whatever it is. And they're now working their way up to the Supreme Court for decisions. We had some indication in the questions from the Supreme Court justices just yesterday, talking about the tariffs that Trump imposed back in April and what he calls Liberation Day, which is anything but that. I think if you start to see that court make decisions on that, on birthright citizenship, on the use of the Alien Enemies Act, that will be an important check. And not only will it be a check, it will be a psychological reassurance to people like you and me, and I presume many others listening. So that's one thing that is happening and looks like it's going to go forward based on what we've seen. Obviously, the election results are enormously important. What we've had since the beginning of Trump's 2.0 is an undercurrent of resistance, but weak, hard to see. It flashed in the open, if you recall, in last spring in the Supreme Court election in the state of Wisconsin, where they don't run as Democrats and Republicans, but where the progressive judge won by a substantial amount, and it was clearly a protest vote against Trump and against the cutting that Elon Musk was doing. Then we had the upsurge of popular resistance when Paramount took Jimmy Kimmel off the air, and 3 million people canceled their subscription to Hulu. And another million or several million canceled their subscription to Disney streaming. And they turned around and they put Jimmy Kimmel online. If you have other episodes like that, it's really important. Now, the off year, the midterm elections, has historically been bad for whatever party was in the White House. If you go back all the way to 1938, the typical loss of House seats for the White House party is 22, 23, 24 seats, and 3 or 4 seats in the Senate. This is not about Trump. This is not about anything else. This is about what happened historically. But you certainly can see the protest vote that you saw on Tuesday in New Jersey and Virginia, and, by the way, in very minor but important elections in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Mississippi. These are tiny little elections. There were 2 state Senate seats that Democrats won in Mississippi. There were 2 state Power Commission seats that were won by Democrats in Georgia. And what was interesting to me was, having watched the polls over the last 9 months, show that 55 to 59 to 63% said Trump was going too far on economics, on tariffs, on deportation, on you name the issue. And you saw these two women win the governorships in New Jersey and Virginia by almost identical percentages, 55, 56, 57. Those are whopping big votes. So that suggests that people are prepared to go to the polls. That's always the question. Do the opinion polls tell you just how people feel, or do they tell you what people are going to do? So the answer to your question is that we know how people feel. The question is, what are they going to do and what's going to happen between now and then? I'm not smart enough to make that prediction for you, but I think the signs from Tuesday were encouraging, at least, that people want to turn things back from where they are now.
Final question, Rick. We promised that we'd let you go at the half hour here, and you've been very kind to give us that time. We know that you have some other commitments to your family. This would probably be in the wheelhouse of our next guest, Richard Eskow, who was a speechwriter for Bernie Sanders. Here in Northern California, we're very big on grassroots movements. It probably started with Save the Redwoods. Here in Northern California, we are very highly motivated environmentalists, not just the Redwoods, but across the board. The Bernie Sanders movement was very much of a grassroots movement. Norman Solomon, who is a good friend of the show, is a co-founder of Roots Action, which has many, many members throughout the country and is very active. What advice would you give us here in Northern California about organizing and mobilizing?
I'm not very good at that, but I think the key thing here is listening. I think people are telling you what they want. Everybody's talking today. The key word is affordability. It's going to become a cliche word, but it is literally true. This is why I go back to the economic division, the economic inequality, the wedge that got driven into our society, back starting with the 1980s and coming forward. I wrote a book called Who Stole the American Dream? When I started out to write that book, I didn't have the word stole in the title. I just said, what happened to the American dream? Well, when I looked at what happened to the 401k plan, replaced the company retirement plan, it shifted $800 billion a year from the corporate books onto the backs of ordinary workers, okay? And the same kind of thing happened in housing, okay? And the same kind of thing happened in wages. Corporations used to spend 50-50 roughly of what their profits were every year on either rewarding their investors or investing in the company, which meant giving pay raises to their workers. Most recently, they spend 90% for their stockholders and 10% or less for the workers in the company. That tells you what's happened. I think those are absolutely gut issues. And I can understand that you have a show that's concerned with national security. You've got great environment out there and you're concerned with that. But I got to tell you, the ache and pain in this country is economic. It really is economic, and that drives people in all kinds of different directions. When people can't make it economically, they go off in all different directions. When you look at the way voters have behaved, from voting for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, to Trump, and now maybe against Trump, they don't know where to go. Yeah. All they know is they're hurting, and somebody needs to take care of it.
Yeah, I was having a quick conversation with the poet Gary Snyder, Pulitzer Prize-winning poet. And he lives here in Northern California. And he said, we've become a nation of, what he said, nomads. We've become a nation of homeless people. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, most Americans are so financially insecure and so relationship insecure and so insecure in general about their homes. We're always in the searching for a new job, a new home, new relationships. Nothing is stable in America anymore.
I don't agree with that entirely. I think a lot of people are still in their same jobs, but their jobs aren't paying them. They aren't giving them either the health insurance or the ability to afford to buy a house or the ability to take care of their health care or the ability to finance a college or a good education for their kids. You're right. Some of it is nomad, but I think that's overdoing it. It's not. People are economically unsettled. They're insecure. And that is absolutely fundamental. When people are, you've got a portion of the American middle class today that is downwardly mobile. And we used to be the most upwardly mobile country in the world. Now there are studies that show we're way behind 7 or 8 European countries. It's much worse to be an American down near the bottom or the lower third than it is to be a Brit or a French or a German or a Norwegian or a Swede or an Italian. I mean, that's terrible. And I don't think if we don't address that, we're going to continue to have these other problems. If people can't make it economically, they go in all different directions. Everything else starts to matter. Girls' bathrooms matter. All kinds of other stuff matters, when you can't make it. I'm sorry, I got to go. I hope people come visit me on my YouTube channel, The People versus the Politicians, because some of the stuff you're talking about, I've got up on that channel, The People versus the Politicians. Right. I look forward to talking to you again when the book comes out. Okay?
You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much.
My pleasure to be with you. Always a pleasure.
Hedrick Smith, he is preeminent American journalist. Thank you once again. Do you podcast, Rick?
I don't. I'm writing a book. I can't do everything. I'm only got.
Very good. Have a great rest of the day.
I'm on YouTube and I'm on the web, but I'm not podcasting.
Once again on YouTube, we can find you at what?
The People versus VS the Politicians. The People vs the Politicians.
Wonderful.
We got it. We'll plug it.
All right. Thank you for being our first.
And then there's one up there that says, "How did Abe Lincoln see Trump coming?" How did Abe Lincoln see Trump coming? All right.
Wow. Super.
All right. Take care.
Our best regards. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
Well, it is 32 minutes past the hour. We've been listening to Mr. Hedrick Smith. He is a Pulitzer Prize-winning former New York Times reporter.
Emmy, 2 Pulitzers, 2 Emmys.
I was getting to that. I was getting to
well,
that.
I've got chills. I've got goose flesh.
He is the editor and bureau chief.
I am so excited about talking with our guest. This show is such a privilege.
Well, and it's important.
And
it's important to know these things.
Our next guest is Bernie Sanders' speechwriter. I mean, I'm just so privileged to be sitting in this chair doing this show. I want to thank KMUD for bringing this kind of programming to Northern California. I want to thank the members and underwriters for supporting this station. Please become a member. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting doesn't give out any money anymore. They've been defunded, so you've got to step up.
Yeah.
I want to say again, I have got gooseflesh speaking to citizen patriots like Rick Smith and like our next guest. Why don't you introduce our next guest?
Very good. I just want to remind listeners they can call in and speak to our guest at 707-923-3911. So our next guest is Richard Eskow. Richard was with us, a few months back as we were talking about the upcoming elections. Mr. Eskow is host and managing editor of The Zero House, a program on cable television, broadcast radio, and podcasts. He is a longtime progressive journalist and consultant. And as John mentioned, he was the chief writer and editor for the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. Welcome back, Richard. Hello. Oops, your mic's not on. Can you put your mic on?
It's good to be back.
There we go.
Thank you. And I enjoyed listening to Hedrick Smith, too.
Yeah.
He takes my breath away. The scope of his knowledge and the scope of his experience, going back to being bureau chief in Washington and domestically, and then bureau chief in Moscow for the New York Times, his international experience, and then just flipping his print journalism career into PBS and then winning, 2 more Emmys in that. It's just, I can't, that's why he was the answer to a Jeopardy question, because there's nobody else that could say that. But, you've got your own chops, my friend.
Right.
So let's start out with the same way we started out with Rick Smith. We have Dick Cheney dying. We have the first socialist Democratic mayor of New York City. We've got Nancy Pelosi. Deciding to resign,
announcing a retirement. Yeah.
What do you make of all this?
Well, I mean, it's clear that there's a change underway. There has been at least since Trump's reelection, and what I make of it is that the model that the Democratic Party took on in the 1990s that worked for a while, which was corporate friendly, big donor driven, kind of inside the beltway. You mentioned Dick Cheney dying. I don't know if you've mentioned the fact that Kamala Harris tweeted a very complimentary memorial note about Cheney as a great American patriot who loved democracy and so on. Dick Cheney was a war criminal who stole the year 2000 election, was one of the worst. He's rates with King Leopold in the Belgian Congo in terms of body count for war crimes. But the Democratic Party went from being the party of tomorrow, right? That was bridge to tomorrow, bridge to the 21st century, the Bill Clinton thing, to being the party of the status quo. And so Trump won because, so part of what I make of it is that Trump won in part because a lot of voters said, I slipped, my poor producer had to edit me the other day. A lot of voters said, the S blank T, we're sick of this S blank T that we've been getting for 40, 50 years. So they voted for Trump. And what we learned this week on Tuesday was they said, but this isn't the SHIT I was looking for. We don't like this either. Yeah. So what we have is, the Democrats can win elections from in dire straits by not being Donald Trump. That's been their strategy for the last 10 years. Sometimes it works. It certainly worked in New Jersey and Virginia, and I agree with Rick Smith. These are protest votes against the way things are going, but that's not building an ideology or a movement for the future. Yeah. And I think Mamdani's win we've already seen people trying to dismiss it as well. New York City is not like other parts of America. Well, people don't realize that more Americans live in urban and semi-urban settings now than they do in rural. So New York is a lot like big cities in this country resemble each other more than. So I wouldn't be that quick to dismiss the excitement and energy that Mamdani created, nor to dismiss the fact that for a lot of, especially younger New York City residents, participating in a movement. This is what we saw with the Bernie campaign, too. It was amazing to watch from the inside how suddenly people who felt adrift and lost in life found meaning and purpose and direction and community and many of the other things we need to be complete human beings in becoming part of the Bernie campaign. Now we saw it with Mamdani in New York, that it became a movement that gave that gave meaning and purpose to primarily, but not exclusively, younger people there. So meanwhile, we see the Democratic Party, looking around for new direction. I was reading the other day comments from Ken Martin, who's the Democratic National Committee chair. First of all, he uses, I don't know which consultant told him this, but Democrats, I think, have been told, well, if you swear a lot, people will think you're a real person, So, he uses, throws in a few four-letter words. He seems like a nice guy, seems like he wants to do the right thing, but he's got a tough job. But he was saying, well, what people really want is, that financial reassurance, as Rick Smith was saying, absolutely correct. And so they want that. They want us to tell the bosses and the oligarchs to go stuff it. Well, that's true. But if you're the head of the Democratic National Committee, you don't have a budget the way you're designed now if you tell the oligarchs to go stuff it. So you have to kind of pretend to tell the oligarchs to go stuff it. And I'll say this for our electorate. Our voters have better BS detectors than politicians give them credit for.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that we've seen in a lot of elections is that, we just don't buy you. We don't even know why exactly, but we don't buy you. And I think that the test is going to be, is there an authentic approach? Are Democrats going to even embrace future Mamdanis and candidates that are flawed in new ways, right? Like Graham Plattner in Maine, the whole thing about his tattoo that turned out to be a Nazi symbol and so on. He says he didn't know. He was like a traumatized ex-soldier. That's certainly possible. But we've learned that the sort of taboos of the old politics are gone now. Otherwise, Trump wouldn't be president. So rules are being written culturally in terms of speech, in terms of all of that. But I agree with Rick Smith's analysis that voters care about economics, but I would take it a step further and say that economics bleeds into other issues too. So, for example, I think voters are a lot more opposed to the national security state and runaway military economy than pundits give them credit for. We saw in 2016 political science studies showing that communities in Wisconsin that had seen more than the average share of casualties from Iraq and Afghanistan went for Trump disproportionately, which caused Hillary to lose Wisconsin. So right there, her embrace of Iraq hurt her. And of course, Obama jumped into the lead because he could say credibly that he didn't Iraq. He wasn't in the Senate then. So, and I think what people would find is that economic security is kind of tied to, well, why are we sending 14 billion to Israel? Why are we sending so much in the way of manpower to Europe, Western Europe, and so on? And so why do we have, 800 or so bases of various kinds around the world? Why is our military budget going up? $1 trillion is a lot of money. And so I think that, where I would take Rick a step further is that I think it's interlinked. So Mamdani's position on Israel, I think, tied into his economic message. And I'll just say one last thing, that Mamdani did something that was truly revolutionary by liberal politics standards when he first ran, when he was nowhere in the races. He went to places like Queen and Staten Island and asked Trump voters, why do you vote for him? And there's this cultural thing. I remember when I was working for Bernie, he got slammed for going on Fox News. It's like, but Bernie was very good with Trump voters too. But it was, the attitude has been, they're deplorable, as Hillary said. There's a lot of commentary after the 2024 election. It just shows we're a terrible country and all that kind of thing from Democratic Party insiders, political consultants, and so on. But talking to people you don't agree with, that don't agree with you already, that's the job of a politician. So I think this outreach and finding common ground in food prices and healthcare prices and so on, that's got to be a part of the message.
Richard, I want to believe. I want to hope. I want to believe everything you've said and hope for a better future and hope that this Trump nightmare is over. But let me tell you this much. I remember when Bernie was running for president, and I attended one of his rallies in San Jose, I think it was. And I just, the place was packed and it was on fire, standing room only. And I just said to myself, there's no way this guy can lose. There's no way this guy can lose. But yet Hillary Clinton got the nomination. I feel I voted for Hillary Clinton. I gave her money. I went door to door for her. Wanted the first woman president, but I still feel in my gut that it was stolen from Bernie. When I ran for supervisor in Mendocino County, I also encountered what I think Bernie encountered on a much larger level, and that is the political machine, political insight, just the power brokers, if you will. It didn't matter where I went for an endorsement. It could be AFL-CIO, it could be SEIU, it could be the Sierra Club, but the questions were the same. Who's on your committee and who are your donors? who's on your committee
Mhm.
and who are you. In other words,
Absolutely.
they want to. I mean, yeah, Mary was with me for some of these meetings. The only place that didn't ask me, who I was connected to was the city of 10,000 Buddhas in Talmadge. They wanted to hear what was in my heart.
Right.
But that was the only place that wanted to know, that wasn't part of, some bigger machine.
Yeah.
So my question is, of course, how do up and comers fight the machine?
Well, I think it's a mixed strategy. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I've actually written about this at length for The Nation and elsewhere, that you have a massive the Democratic Party went from courting corporations to becoming a kind of corporate enterprise. There is a huge infrastructure of politicians staffers, consultants, think tanks. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar enterprise whose, like all organizations, its prime directive is self-preservation, and second to that is winning elections. So in 2016, I think they preferred to lose to Trump, which they thought might actually be great for fundraising, probably was, than to win with Bernie, because Bernie, he didn't go to the same donors. He was a small donor candidate. He proved that could be done, which was threatened the entire ecosystem of giant think tanks that pay six-figure salaries to 22-year-old kids who will write their copy for. I mean, nothing against 22-year-old kids, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. And so I think you're absolutely right. So I think that and if you try to go to like the DNCC, if you want to run for Congress, I've talked to so many people who said they just wanted to know exactly what you said, who my donors were, how much I could get, and if I couldn't give them hard numbers, I was gone. And others said they got called and told to drop out because we want somebody else. It's the phenomenon of vote. I call it vote blue, we'll tell you who. And which is why Mamdani didn't get Chuck Schumer's election endorsement and so on. So to those candidates that you're talking about, I think, we have to, first of all, declare mental independence from the Democratic Party, which doesn't mean don't run as a Democrat. Mamdani did it successfully, but it means see it as part of your toolkit and not as the whole toolkit. So situation by situation, you had a non-Democratic candidate in Nebraska, senatorial candidate last time around, who was doing so well that the Democratic Party decided to endorse him, even though he didn't, take the Democratic Party line. And he got 45% of the vote in what's considered a hardcore red state. He might win next time. I think there's got to be more scoping out the territory, determining. We also have, I've spent some time with India Walton, who ran for mayor of Buffalo in upstate New York. And India won the Democratic Party, but then the Democratic incumbent got big money donations to run.
He was on our show.
They don't play by the rules. Yeah. So we've got to just be opportunistic and say, can I win this primary? But it's organize from the ground up, convince people there's a mission here, there's a project here, and we can do it.
Richard, you've been in journalism, you're a progressive and a consultant. We obviously all know that the media has changed, and it's been threatened now for the last, 8 years. Can you talk about the media's role in what we're hearing? Is there false information? Is it just
how much
of it is false? And just react a little bit to how the media's role in this, where we find ourselves now. How have they played a part? And we're independent journalists.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're broadcasting here from a community radio station.
Right.
Sure. And listen, I was banned from MSNBC during the Obama administration. So, and they were supposed to be the liberals, but because I criticized Obama there. But it's huge, and it's been going on 30, 40 years, but it's changing now. Again, for 34 years, we saw the corporate consolidation, right, where you had 38, 40 media companies around the country, and then it was down to six. And so they had enormous control over what people thought. A political scientist said back in the 80s, they can't tell you what to think, but they can tell you what to think about. Well, now I think they kind of sometimes tell people what to think, but that status quo of inside the Beltway journalism ruled for a long time. I remember I covered a fiscal summit, it was called, by the conservative billionaire Pete Peterson and his foundation. And you had Democratic senators, Republican senators. Bill Clinton was there, but also Donna Bash and, all these folks getting huge paydays for hosting a panel or something. This was how it was done. And then as Marcia Raddick asked one of the candidates in the 2012 debates, everybody knows Social Security is going broke. That's what you get for your money. And so that's where our mainstream media was misleading us for a long time. But now that's breaking down. Even as right-wing fanatics, as opposed to like insider centrist types, take over the mainstream media is dying off as a political. It still has tremendous political influence, but it's not. It doesn't have the exclusive stranglehold it had, which is why far right billionaires like the Ellison family are buying TikTok too, right? Because pretty soon, I mean, community radio will last. My show is distributed through, it's cable TV, but the YouTube and other portions of it, I mean, I consider seriously endangered because of the algorithm. Mark Zuckerberg's on board with, the right-wing agenda. Jeff Bezos has the Washington Post. He's on board with the right-wing agenda. It's only going to be a matter of time. So I have faith, when I have faith, I have my moments of doubt. I have faith that just as people will organize for a Mamdani or a Bernie, that they will also organize for building new media outlets as they suppress others.
So this is going to seem like a self-serving question because we're broadcasting from KMUD, and I used to be on KZYX, our sister station in Mendocino County, and I was also on KMUD. On KMEC, Mendocino Environmental Center. These are three small stations. What advice would you give to the listeners, to the members, to the underwriters, to the board, to the staff, to the board of directors, in organizing and mobilizing on what seems to be a moment in history right now, an inflection point? Not how do we survive, but how do we really become true alternative media, viable.
With truth.
Yeah, viable and sustaining.
Well, I think the answer, as in so many things, I mean, I don't claim to have the answer, but I think one answer is, as I say, organize, fundraise, campaign, raise awareness, let your neighbors know that this resource is there and is a part of your community and that they should be listening to, they should be contributing to, they should be participating. If your community radio station has elections for, board leadership and so on, participate, get involved. If you have ideas, bring them and that kind of thing. I think that, I am a big believer that people have more power than they realize. And I think that's been proven to us. We don't win every time, but I think it's been proven to over and over again that we can do more than we've been told we can do.
And how are organizations like Roots Action playing into this movement?
Well, Roots Action is my sponsor for the show, The Zero Hour. I don't claim to speak for it, but Roots Action is a channel for people to make their voices heard to leadership through petitions and other things. It's an educational outlet, not only through the Zero Hour, but through various teaching programs it has and materials that are available online. We need to build a thriving ecosystem, which includes organizing channels like Roots Action and informational channels like your show and like the Zero Hour and others, and we need to keep the diversity, the thousand flowers blooming, because if one person starts to dominate even the independent media, then we start to get in trouble again. So just, diversity of ideas and energy and creativity.
I remember when I was over at KZYX, again, our sister station, the then general manager, when he talked about diversity, he said, well, if we really want to be diverse, we need more conservative voices. We've become like an NPR mouthpiece. And my argument to him was, well, the conservatives have mainstream media. They maybe you can have some representation here in your programming, but we are that function. We are the alternative media. We are that other voice. What would you say to an argument like that?
I would say pretty much what you said, that we don't have diversity now because we have a monolithic from hard conservative to fanatic conservative. So by providing an alternative voice, we are the diversity. And to cut that in half means less diversity, not more. So, I'm with you on that one. And besides, I also think journalism, even advocacy journalism, is about telling the truth. And I don't think that's the truth.
Right.
All right. Let's wind up by talking about your work.
How can people find you?
How can people find you? And what's going on with, again, alternative outlets like Substack, etc.
Yeah, well, I have a newsletter that does come out through Substack, zerohourreport.com. You can find it there. The show is the Zero Hour with RJ Eskow. Website is thisisthezerohour.com, and I publish other places too, but we need support over at the Zero Hour too. We're fighting an uphill battle.
It's just...
You'll be on my Christmas list.
Well, thank you. Christmas is not far away.
True or Hanukkah? True or false? I write out a bunch of checks at the end of the year.
That'll be
good to know, John. I would have been nicer all along.
And one is going to be to KMUD. It's again. I just want to urge listeners to become members. Your support is the very lifeline of this station, as it is for other small, independent, either public radio stations or community radio stations. As our guest points out, we are the alternative voice. We are the progressive voice. We are the other voice crying in the wilderness, and largely getting drowned out by monolithic media.
Yeah.
But we have our place in this ecosystem. Rick, I had to call you Rick. Richard, take it away.
Well, that's it. Thanks so much for joining us, for letting me join you, rather. See, I'm on the wrong side now. And I look forward to the next time.
Very good.
Thank you. You're the best. And how's Bernie doing?
I'm not in touch with him that much anymore. Maybe he's mad at me. I don't know. He gets mad sometimes. Who knows?
Very good. Well, thank you again for being our guest for the second half hour. We wish you and yours a great holiday.
A great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, and the very same to you.
That is our show.
We want to thank our engineer.
Yes, Cece. She has been terrific, and we will be back, John, first Thursday in December, which I believe is around the 4th.
Yeah.
And we're off until then. So, just a reminder: you heard us speaking about supporting, trying to get the truth out.
Support this station. We just brought you a guest who has won 2 Pulitzer Prizes, 2 Emmy Awards for journalism. Our second guest was Bernie Sanders' speechwriter. This happens on your community radio station, KMUD. If you like this programming, please support this station by becoming a member. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
War after war, you old feudal parasites, You just sacrifice the poor. You got the cutting-edge weapons, but your scam's still the same as it's been since the Romans. Yo, it's the patriot game. Yo, that's the war racket.